Hi, everyone. Thank you very much, Benji, for your presentation. My name is Jesper Katomero. I work with Shahid Maji as a national research coordinator. I'm really excited to participate in this webinar series themed Government Responsiveness. So I'll jump straight away to my PowerPoint presentation. We at Shahid Maji, which is an NGO dealing with water issues in Tanzania, it is based in Morogoro. We have a program which is called Fair Water Future Program. And right now it is in its second phase of its implementation. Its main objective is to improve water resource management among communities in different parts of the country. It also seeks to empower local communities to hold duty bearers to account. This is the accountability dimension of the program. In terms of targets, we are focusing on 3 communities, which are farmers, pastoralists, and fisher folks. In terms of how we do this, to interact with these communities and eventually duty bearers, we follow 3 interrelated steps. The first one is that we have what we call Fair Water Future Program case studies. These are 4 case studies. I will explain them in detail at a later stage. And then the second step involves collecting evidence through research, both qualitative and quantitative research undertakings. And then once we have the evidence at hand, we move into the third step, which is to advocate for change or to engage those in position of authority to make a difference in terms of the concerns that we have packaged them in evidence, so to speak. Next slide. Now, in terms of the approach that we use to do our work, we use the social accountability monitoring approach, which in simple terms, it means empowering ordinary citizens or local communities, essentially to have a voice to demand accountability from duty bearers. But in doing this, we pay particular attention to participatory approaches that are used in the management of water resources. But we also try to impart some kind of awareness or knowledge to these communities so that they can understand their water rights, obligations related to issues like water permits and water tenure. We also are pretty much concerned with promoting equality in water resource management between men and women. And our approach is also essentially long-term advocacy approach. Next slide. So as I said earlier, we have a couple of case studies that we focus on, in our work. We have basically 4 case studies. The first one is called Fair Water Allocation and Water Tenure for Sustainable Water Use in Agriculture. So this one essentially focuses on communities that are dealing with agricultural activities. Its main objective is to document challenges to fair water allocation and secure water tenure for smallholder farmers within the Morogoro region. And we target Chazuru Farmers Irrigation Scheme. Chazuru is one of the villages which is found in Morogoro, but also Kilosa and Ifakara Town Council. All these are found in the Morogoro region. The second case study is about rights to water and water tenure security. and this covers the fisher folk communities. And it aims to assess the water tenure issues for fisher folks and eventually build evidence to demonstrate gaps inherent in policy and practices, which may, tend to limit the right to access water for fisher folks. And in terms of target, we focus on Ifakara Town Council, which is found in Katomero district. All of these case studies are found in Morogoro region. The third one is about security of water tenure for pastoralists, and it seeks to assess and document challenges to fair water allocation and secure water tenure for these communities. And it targets villages in Kilosa and Katomero districts, specifically Wade and Lugongole villages. And finally, the fourth case study is about resilience to flood and drought impacts. Its main objective is to document evidence on how communities are affected due to regular occurrence of floods and droughts. And just like the other case studies, it seeks to assess the gaps between policy and practice. Next slide. So I thought it's important to say something on government responsiveness. Thanks to Benji for presenting the accountability cycle, which I think it was pretty clear. Now, accountability cannot really complete without the other end, which is responsiveness, because basically you have the demand side and the supply side. And so I conceptualize responsiveness as the ability of a system or a functional unit to complete assigned activities or tasks within a given time. And when we make reference to government responsiveness, then we mean the ability of a government to respond readily and empathetically to appeals, efforts, influences, concerns, needs, etc., that comes from these communities or citizens. Next slide. So responsiveness also follows some steps or stages from the government part. The first one is that the government needs to understand and to listen exactly what communities needs or what citizens needs. And then it has to acknowledge these particular needs, issues or concerns or challenges or problems. And the third one is that it has to take action. This is a really key part of the responsiveness cycle. The government has got to respond to these particular needs and concerns. And finally, there has to be a strategy to communicate regularly to citizens. Now, in terms of how effective responsiveness can be, then this varies depending on context, depending on capacity issues, and depending on the whole range of factors. But maybe we can discuss that later. But in the interest of this presentation, let's just take this for clarity. Next slide, please. So there are three what I call responsiveness, government responsiveness bubbles. Of course, they summarize what I just said previously. The government has to listen to citizens and communities. It has to inform what's happening. It has that particular duty to share information of what it's doing, and that connotes to transparency. And eventually it has to address or respond to public concerns that are presented before it. Next slide. Now, in terms of our experience, Shahid or Maji experiences with regards to how can we make the government to listen, or how can we make the government to respond? I've tried to summarize a number of factors that are really key to, making the government respond. Based on our experience with the Fair Water Future program that I mentioned earlier. So the first factor is about constructive engagement as opposed to confrontational approach. So the government would really not respond to the kind of concerns or issues or challenges that are presented before it, if they are, presented in a manner that is violent, for example, in the manner that uses protest approach, or in the manner that is, it doesn't sit really well with government officials. So we have learned that if you want to make a case, a strong case to the government and make it listen, you have to use this approach, which is constructive engagement. And basically it means respecting the authority, but also understanding, their work, and presenting what kind of additional information or additional evidence that you think, it may be useful for them to address the challenges that you think affect communities or citizens. And that has tended to work effectively. The other approach or factor, which relates to the first one, which I said earlier, is building and sustaining partnerships with the government. And this comes through a process. And this process, making reference to our work, as I said earlier, we engage in research undertakings. So when you do research, you have to make sure that government officials are part in the process of the research. They are involved, as part of co-production of knowledge. And through this particular involvement, you build partnerships along the way, you build trust, and eventually when you present the evidence that there is a particular challenge related to WASH, or particular issue related to WASH, they will tend to listen to you and to respond. And number three is dialogue and discussions in various forums. It could be village forums, ward forums, or district forums, or even regional and national forums. And our experience in regard to this point is that once you have robust evidence, credible evidence about a particular situation that affects communities, essentially WASH-related challenges, then you can invite government officials at different levels. And when they come at these forums, when you present the evidence or the issues, they tend to listen, and they have the opportunity to even tell you that maybe we think you could even go an extra mile to do this and that. But it has proved to be a really effective way to make duty bearers listen, because they feel part of the process in the dialogue setup. The fourth one is you need to follow the rules and respecting authority, as I said earlier. The government machinery is really bureaucratic in our context, and I believe in other contexts. So it is a system that works through rules, regulations, procedures, processes, etc. So when you do the research, you need to follow all the rules, including having the research permit, and writing letters to different authorities in case you want to interview these people. And once you do that, you're safe to go. So protocols are also important, and that can guarantee, responsiveness at the end of the day. Number 5 is about building a strong case with genuine evidence. This one relates to the other points I mentioned earlier. So the government can only accept the evidence that it perceives to be credible, the evidence that really reflects the true picture on the ground, and evidence that is not aligned to any, kind of. So if it is robust, if it is genuine, chances are that they will listen at you. Number 6 is, from our experience, we also learned that when you focus on underserved or underrepresented groups such as women, youth, and the elderly, there are some kind of sympathy, that government officials have. So it's true that these groups are really at the disadvantaged position, and therefore it makes sense, when you make a case or when you argue a case, it's really appealing, and in that context, we have witnessed that government officials really tend to respond. I'm not saying that other groups are not that much important, but from our experience, we have witnessed this as one of the strategies to make them respond to issues. And finally, you need not to give up, because these guys are really busy. They have work schedules. At times they can use this excuse that I'm busy while they're not, but you have to be persistent. You're supposed to not easily give up. And eventually, from our experience at Shahid or Maji, we have come to learn that persistence really is a key to making government officials respond. From that note, Benji, back to you. I'd be really happy to respond to questions coming from the audience.